I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a powerful and thought-provoking story with Mark Merkley. He has penned a wonderful book. It is called Sandra's Syndrome. This gripping novel blends true-life fiction with themes of racial bigotry, superstition, and the challenges of holding a secret that even God can accept. With a compelling heroine and a journey toward understanding and acceptance, Sandra's Syndrome is a page-turner that challenges readers to confront their biases and to rethink the power of transformation. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his wonderful book. The links are below this interview. Mark, great to see you here today on Spotlight. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me as your guest. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write Sandra's Syndrome.
Well, it was some time ago. I was reading a book by another author that was a book about a murderer that could not be found. And they knew that the murderer was male, but they couldn't find this murderer until one of the detectives, an FBI agent, found out that this could be a person who is 46XY androgen insensitive. And that's a person who is conceived male, but is born female. But they didn't know. The one thing that I thought was intriguing about this is I didn't know that this syndrome existed. And I was a little upset that the person in this story had to be a murderer. And I felt like that was not justice to the character. So I thought, having been born and reared a Mormon, an LDS person, what if this happened to a young lady or a person with 46XY androgen insensitivity who went to BYU and then met and fell in love with a gentleman there? And then I started to think of all of the other ramifications and subplots that could be employed in such a book. And so I retired as a university instructor. And 2 to 3 days after my retirement, I started earnestly writing this book. And in 7 months, I had my first manuscript. And then I hired a writing coach who assisted me in getting the novel completed. And instead of making my 46XY androgen insensitive individual a murderer, she's a heroine. She's a hero. So that is what inspired me. And then I put within this all of the context of what I had learned about LGBTQ, what I had learned about racism, and what I had been taught about gender bias within my own faith, and then put that within the context of other individuals within their own context of faith, and how we may be mistaken because of genetics, and how we need to understand genetics and understand that genetics are just as true as gospel principles.
Fascinating backstory and all of that. It's a fascinating book as well. And tell us a little bit about a special date that you chose in the book, June 8th, 1978. Why did you make that a pivotal date in the story?
It was on that date, 10 years after the civil rights issues and laws had been enacted, wherein the Mormon Church, or the LDS Church, decided and had a revelation that Blacks could now hold the priesthood and could be accepted fully into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I think this was a little late in coming because there were plenty of people who were already protesting ahead of that time. But nonetheless, that's when the story begins, is on that date. And it deals with Sandra, who is the principal character in my book and is figured behind me, she's upset and she wants to know why. Why haven't my prayers been answered as to an explanation for my acceptance? Because I cannot be accepted as a person who appears female, but is genetically male, representing the letters in our day and time of T and Q, but in 1978, the LGBTQ was non-existent. So we've had to go through a period and a span of time through my text to arrive at current day understanding of where we are and turning her into a heroine because she is a person who is very talented, very beautiful, but she's transgendered and queer. And I think the person that she met, Luke, should be given some credit as well for accepting her for what she is and loving her. And they created a family and they adopted their own children, and the children they adopted were multiracial, Black and Asian, so that we could add those contexts into this aspect of what the total story discusses.
How do you think your book would be received amongst members of the Mormon community today?
Well, it's interesting. I've tried to get some feedback even from my own family members. I have a sister who has read the book and she loves it. She enjoyed it very much. My brother, who is very strict, I think would put his hands up and say, keep it away from me. Because of the current aspect of LGBTQ. But there are other people. There's a gentleman I play basketball with here and I play softball with in Arizona. I came here to retire so that I could play softball year round. And Pastor Thomas Tripp, he made this comment, and I'm republishing the book so that his comment can be included in it. And he said, for decades, I lived in tight structures, believing that everything must fit into a specific nook or cranny. But Mark Merkley's novel, Sandra Syndrome, confronted me with broader realities. It forced me to come to grips with the truth that gender identity does not always fit into a tight formula. Merkley introduced me to a character with a rare but not unique syndrome, and he brings the character to life, encouraging me to face the very real fears, struggles, and potentials that this character and others with the same syndrome experience in life. Sandra Syndrome grapples with an issue extremely pertinent to our society at this time. Opinions about this issue often result in stark divisions between people, but Merkley fills the book with love and leaves the reader with hope that we might come to a place of deeper understanding and of compassion toward one another.
Oh, that is wonderful praise.
And I think that Pastor Tom Tripp says it better than I can.
Yeah. Is that your hope for readers, that they have a better understanding of people in different circumstances, become more empathetic, become more compassionate, become perhaps more Christ-like in their acceptance of others with differences?
I would stand and applaud that. But I think that too many times I've had another reader here who read the book, and I could pull that letter out, but says essentially Sandra is going to hell. And that bothers me because we cannot fight genetics. And I say this as an athlete, you cannot coach height and you cannot coach speed. Either you have it or you don't.
Right.
And that affects in athletics, and it affects everything in life. Their genetics are just a part of us, and if we happen to have the genetics with the genetic markers that cause us to be a certain way or to even catch certain diseases, as a type 1 insulin dependent diabetic, I didn't choose that. That just happened to me. And I advise women, be aware of BRCA1 and BRCA2. They are genetic markers that your doctor can take, and they can look at those genetic markers and they tell your doctor whether you have a higher possibility or rate or incidence of acquiring ovarian or breast cancer. And we should be medically testing people for genetic conditions that maybe we can help cure.
Yeah. Cure
And
or ameliorate somehow, because some things can't be cured, some things can't be changed, but we can learn how to live with them. And I think that's the point of your book, that we have
yes,
to learn to live with our genetics. It's a terrific book, folks. It is called Sandra's Syndrome. It is a gripping novel that blends true life fiction with themes of racial bigotry, superstition, and the challenges of holding a secret that even God can accept. With a compelling heroine and a journey towards understanding and acceptance, Sandra's Syndrome is a page turner that challenges readers to confront their own biases and rethink the power of transformation. Mark, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Mr. Crawford, thank you. I thank you for giving voice to this story and to the message that it may give to the world.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your candor, your insight, and your wisdom today that you shared with us, as well as your faith in sharing Sandra's Syndrome, the story behind it, and the great message that lies beyond this text. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.